Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gary from General Fan TV. Back at you on the video. At the content, you to go smash that like button at the content of this channel. Go ahead, subscribe, man. Look, so we're gonna talk about the Ravens' remaining schedule, how the Ravens are, thanks to the Eagles beating the Chiefs on number one seed in the playoffs, does that really matter? And then talk a little bit about some guys to returning back for the Ravens to practice. Okay, so I guess we'll start right there, right? Some key players return back to the Ravens today for their practice. Um, so Pepe Williams, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley all returned today back to practice in some form of capacity. By the time I release this video or the time I'm recording this video, I don't know whether it was limited for whatever. I just saw the videos on the Ravens Twitter page, you know what I mean, that they're back practicing. That's good enough news for me. I'm not gonna go full in depth about it, but I will say this: I saw a lot of Ravens fans mentioning it, and I think that is also I think it's a good idea that if all three of those guys are held until after the bye week, it makes perfect sense to me, right? The Ravens bye week, the Ravens play the Chargers this week Sunday night, then it's a bye week, right? The Ravens want to wait to after the bye to get those guys back. That makes perfect sense to me. That'd be perfectly fine. But the fact that those guys are here, active, practicing, very good, right? Pepe Williams honestly is one of I know he hasn't done a lot technically in his Ravens career, but he's one of my favorite Ravens. His attitude, his spirit, those kind of things kind of remind me how the Ravens have with Marcus Peters, kind of like that dog fight kind of mentality, right? So I would love to see Pepe Williams get out there and play this year. I don't know how much he actually would play because the Ravens secondary has been pretty good, you know what I mean? So, but good to see him back, Ronnie, Marlon. So great to see those guys back in any capacity. We'll see what happens Sunday night, how much of they play, right? All right. Now, the main thing about this video I want to talk about is I really did this video last year, right? Where the Ravens were the one seed or very up there in the playoff race, and I said everything was wide open to them, and how they go the rest of this season will decide their path in the playoffs, right? Now, almost immediately after that video, the Ravens tanked. You know what I mean? Lamar got hurt. Things happen. So if that happens again this year, I won't do this video again. I won't do this video again. Right? I won't jinx it again. But first of all, I think that first of all we gotta give credit to Lamar Jackson and the team last year, even being at the position. Right? We know the team was not as good as the one this year. The team last year blew several leads and things like that. To still be in that kind of position, amazing. Lamar Jackson doesn't get enough credit for the fact that really every year he's been in the league as a full-time starter, he's been an MVP candidate, right? This year is no different. Last year was no different than the year before, and that so on and so forth. He has been one of the best, between the very best into the maybe three or four at the lowest as far as quarterbacks during his time in the NFL, right? So I think some of that sometimes that gets overlooked, but yeah. So this year the Ravens are sitting at 8-3, and really the Ravens could be even better than that. We know they dropped several games. Honestly, we know they lost to the Colts. We know they lost to the Steelers and the Browns. Right now, when I look back at the schedule, the Ravens losing really to the Colts is kind of a big deal, right? This is why every game matters. And I know it's early on in the season, you don't know what your team is, stuff like that. But when you play football and you have a limited amount of games, every single game matters. And losing a game like that to the Colts really is a big deal to me, right? So the Ravens should be, better than an 8-3 record, but that's where they are right now. So that's what we'll talk about, right? So the big thing is this, right? We'll look at the remaining schedule for them and the Chiefs. I mean, obviously, there's other teams behind them as well. The Browns are still 7-3, and the Dolphins, guys like that. But just talk about the Ravens and the Chiefs, right? So for the Ravens, the remaining schedule is looking like Chargers, Rams, Jags, 49ers, Dolphins, Steelers. The Ravens are entering really what is their toughest stretch of the season, right? This is where, if you were looking at the schedule before the season started, this was the part of calendar you're like, wow, the Ravens are going through a gauntlet of tough teams, right? It's really starting like right now, all right? While the Chiefs, they get the Raiders, Packers, Bills, Patriots, Raiders again, the Bengals, and the Chargers, right? So, um, Ravens have 6 games left. The Chiefs have 7 games left because the Ravens haven't had their bye week yet, right? So that's obvious right there. Okay, um, but the Chiefs kind of have the same thing that the Patriots with Tom Brady had when they was going through the AFC East, right? Where it's like their division, due to poor play, it's almost kind of a lot of gimme games, right? So they have the Raiders on here, they got the Chargers on here. Now those games will probably be, or at least the Chargers game will probably be tight and contested because the Chargers don't tend to usually get blown out. Um, but it's still like, dang, the Ravens got this gauntlet of tough team, tough team, tough team, and the Chiefs usually don't go through that, right? But just on the Ravens side of it, right? So can the Ravens finish the season 14-3? It's possible. Can they finish the season 13-4? I think that's kind of more along lines where I'm at with it. Between um, they should beat the Chargers. They should beat the Rams. I think they should beat the Jaguars. They should have beat the Jaguars last year, right? 49ers and Dolphins where it gets tricky, and they should have beat the Steelers earlier this year. We know that, right? So all of these games at the end of the schedule are winnable, especially when you think that the Ravens are a good team. Like I think the Ravens are a good team, right? So 49ers, Dolphins, they lose two of those games, and you drop to 12-5. It is what it is. You know what I mean? That very well could happen. But I think the Ravens can finish the season 13-4. As far as the Chiefs go, I mentioned the Chargers, right? The Chargers could be a very, very tough game for them at the end of the year. The Chargers still could be fighting for maybe the last playoff seed in the playoffs, so they could have something to fight for there. But the Bengals were on their schedule, but unfortunately, Joe Burrow got hurt. So that kind of takes the luster out of that game. Raiders have been better since firing Josh McDaniels, but it's still the Raiders. You know what I mean? So how much can you put into that? So excuse me, at the end of the day, does the one seed actually matter, right? I think that's kind of the most important thing when talking about the Ravens and their expectations for this year, right? To me, I think it does matter if the Ravens get the one seed, right? And I'm not really talking about because you want to win the regular season and it's nice to have the best record in the league and when you finish regular season off. All of that actually is great, right? Right now it's really too early to even say that or even care about that. I mean, it's still week 12, right? But at the end of the day, if you they're with the Ravens, sorry, with the Ravens, the way the NFL changed the playoff format, where it's no longer the top two seeds get a bye week, it's just the top one. I think it's very important the Ravens do get that right. The Ravens have played a long season, right? Now all teams play the same amount of games, we know that, right? But the Ravens aren't going to have their bye week until week 13, right? So that's a lot. That's a lack of rest up to that point. That's one reason, right? Two, it's automatic home field advantage throughout the playoffs, right? That's a big deal. If you saw how the Ravens and the Ravens fans and the stadium was rocking versus the Bengals, right? Now imagine that in a playoff game, right? It's going to be even more, 10 times more, right? So I don't want to see and have Ravens fans get scared of the last time the Ravens were the big dog in the playoffs. They got out there versus the Titans and they lost, right? To me, that's no reason to be scared of or to be shy away and don't approach the number one seed, right? You have to go after it full throttle, right? So for me, right, when if the Ravens can get the one seed, also this one less game you have to play in the playoffs, right? You missed the first round, you're right into the divisional round, you win in one game, you're in the AFC Championship game, okay? Crazy stat that I can say about Patrick Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff game, ever. He's never played a road playoff game. Okay, he's a great quarterback. He plays for a great team. They do their thing year in year out. But think about that. Every game, besides obviously Super Bowls, right? Because that's technically a neutral site. He's never played a road playoff game. That's incredible. Now imagine having that with Lamar Jackson, right? Being here at home, winning a playoff game. That's how you want to do it, right? So I don't really care about the past and losing to the Titans and stuff like that. It's the same Ravens team. Lamar Jackson isn't that same player. He's better. This team, I believe, is better prepared for that. We'll see how they get along without Mark Andrews. But at the end of the day, the Ravens are entering a very, very tough and demanding stretch of the season. But if they can put their minds to it, everything is out there and available to them to get the number one seed in the playoffs. And getting the number one seed in the playoffs is a big deal, right? I think it really is because all the reasons I just mentioned. Home field advantage, one less game, one less time we get to go out there and hit. I mean, one less time to have a risk of injury. It's an important thing out there. So if the Ravens can finish this season off strong, finish off, go 14-3 and lock up the playoffs or lock up the one seed, that'd be great. And if the Chiefs can drop a game or two, that's great. So When I look at the Ravens schedule, when I look at how this team is playing right now, it's all out in front of them, right? And I hope that they can get to that level. I hope that they can get that number one seed in the playoffs, and that we're talking about this Ravens team being 14-3 with a first round bye. So the Ravens have played like the best team in the NFL for large parts of the season. So go out there and get the best record in the AFC and show that and prove your status, beating some of these top teams along the way that you show that you really belong up there at the top of the food chain. So that's my thoughts on it, man. Give me your guys' thoughts on it. Do you really care about getting the one seed, or is it just about getting the playoffs and not fumbling it up again like how the Ravens have done in the past? So let me know your thoughts, ideas. We'll talk about it in the comments, man. It's Gabriel, just on Fan TV. I'm out.